That's fine. I'm going to talk about the citation of Mr. Gbenga Sesan. Please, can I request your honor to stand up? It's good to have the power of the mic. So you can ask an executive director to get up, to sit down, to raise up his hand and all of that, you know. But today we are not going to ask him to raise up his hand, but just get him, standing. Now, Gbenga Sesan is the executive director of Paradigm Initiative, Lagos, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights through its offices in Senegal, Cameroon, Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and other parts of developed and developing countries. He is also a non-resident fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab at Stanford University, United States of America. Before starting Paradigm Initiative, Gbenga led the Digital Village, a joint project of Junior Achievement of Nigeria, Microsoft, and the Lagos State government. Originally trained as an electronic and electrical engineer at Obafemi Awolowo University here. So Gbenga Sesan is not a visitor to the Oba Awon University. He's at home. He's back at home now. And then he completed executive education program at Lagos Business School, New York Group of Technology, Transfer, Oxford University, Harvard University, Stanford University, Santa Clara University, the University of the Pacific, and INSEAD. I don't know why he likes to write. When you go online, you won't see Engineer Gbenga Sesan, you won't see Mr. Gbenga Sesan, you won't see anything to qualify that name. But incidentally, he's an engineer trained here, like you have heard. Gbenga's consulting experience includes assignments completed for numerous institutions, including Microsoft, Harvard University, and United Nations agencies, among others, in over 30 countries. A Schwab Foundation Social Entrepreneur of the Year and former member of the United Nations Committee of E-Leaders on Youth and ICT. Can I have a resounding applause for that? He is a Cyber Stewards Fellow, Crown Montana Forum Fellow, Archbishop Desmond Tutu Leadership Fellow, Ashoka Fellow, Our Common Future Fellow, and Codes Fellow. Gbenga served as a member of the Presidential Committee on Harmonization of Information Technology, Telecommunications, and Broadcasting Sectors, 2006, and Roadmap for the Achievement of Accelerated University Broadband Infrastructure and Services Provision, 2013, and was listed by Cable Network News as one of the top 10 African tech voices on Twitter, and by Venture Africa as one of the 40 African legends under 40. He was appointed to the inaugural leadership panel of the Internet Governance Forum for a 2-year term beginning 2022 and 2023 by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Lastly, Gbenga is married to Temilade Sesan, so he's not available. The wife is a PhD holder in energy poverty and development expert. Could you please permit me to welcome Mr. Gbenga Sesan?
I hope this will not go. Thank you very much. Just to say that my wife is also an alumnus of this university. For many reasons, we did not meet on campus. We met while attending the wedding ceremony of another couple. I was just dancing, and then someone came in, and I thought it was, well, you know, those things happen. The Vice Chancellor has made my work easy. I was saying to me, but grilled me appropriately while I was in elect and had to borrow courses from civil engineering. Well, I passed. You know, you made my work easier. As I was saying to them, you've literally read what, some of the notes that I have here. Because to be honest, what we need to do, we know it. At times, what we lack is not just the political will, but also the institutional support required to make this happen. There's enough blame to go around. I love that you mentioned the example of Ekiti State. I was born in Akure in Ondo State, and I heard, as I was growing up, as I was going through nursery school to primary school, that Ekiti was a fountain of knowledge. My wife happens to be from Ekiti State, and we know for a fact that if any state in Nigeria should be asking questions from its own academic institutions about how to solve problems, it should be Ekiti State. Are we surprised that we have now come to a state where, unfortunately, young people have started manufacturing JAMB results? A girl claimed she scored the highest. I mean, I love how bold she is, but I'm glad that she has been found. And it wasn't just her. I found out it was many people. Many people were creating results. And one of the reasons for that is because we do not have a direct connection between the things we say and the things that we celebrate. We talk a lot about students, and I'm glad to see you here. Please put your hands together for our secondary school students. And anyone who is a student of this university, I'm glad that you're here. Because we say to them that education is important. We sing the song. My daughter, who is 5, just graduated from preschool, graduated. It was a big deal. She hugged me and said everything about her graduation, and I was like, what's that? I was one of those who used to wonder why people celebrated graduation for primary school or nursery school. But as a father of a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, I have now witnessed the graduation of 2 children from preschool. We tell students, my daughter was singing a song, Batareadun ko ka toba kawere. And when I heard that song, I was sad. That's not what we do in Nigeria. We say, study, and your shoes will sound well. But those are not the people we celebrate. That's why people fake results. If you put a lecturer, and allow me to do this, and this is very practical. There's a VC here, there's a retired general here, and there is a former speaker. If I ask students in this room the question, you have only one person to take a picture with, I don't need to say more. Mr. Adewa, I said thank you to you many times, but I will say it again. And that's where my story begins today. I have the email here. On October 2, 2000, sent to my Yahoo email, my old email address, the man called Philip Emegwali sent me an email. Many of you will know the name. Philip Emegwali is a bit controversial now, but at some point was the most popular Nigerian alive. How did I know about Philip Emegwali? Mr. Adewa, Physics 2O, I don't remember the name of that room, the only room in that whole building that had AC, that had air conditioning. I invited him to come and talk to us. I was chairman of Electronic Club for the Department of Electrical and Electrical Engineering. And I said to him, because I knew He was someone who balanced industry. He wasn't just a graduate from the school. I saw he was already working with Interco and doing things in industry. And I said to him, come and tell us, show us the future. We are students. We want to be like you when we grow up. And he said, go and find out about Philip Emeagwali. I, being a student who listens dutifully, I smiled because some of my lecturers may not agree with that. But I try my best. But one thing I never stopped doing is to act on what I'm told. Once he said that, I left the room. I went to search for the man, Philip Emeagwali. I found his email address. My friends were like, Philip Emeagwali, he won't respond to you. I'm stubborn. I wrote an email to him, and I said, and in that email, I said to him, this is where we're at. This is the future I see for Nigeria. Internet technologies. This was in the year 2000. It was the year of Y2K. We were not sure what technology was going to bring. But I said to him, I'm studying electrical engineering. My final year project is going to be on e-commerce, which is another story entirely, and I will get there. A lecturer told me that if you want to do your final year project on e-commerce, maybe you should go to computer science department. Some things need to change, and I'm glad that those things are changing. I was here in May. And I heard and I was updated on some of the things that have started happening, and I'm glad. For the first time in my life, I sat in the same room with the DSA, Dean of Student Affairs. And I said to him, sir, when I was here, if I heard DSA was coming, I would be going in the other direction. There was only one reason you were going to see the DSA, maybe one of two reasons. Either you were really the best student in something you went to do, and they want to say thank you to you, or you were on your way through Road 1. For those who don't know, Road 1 is that long drive. And I always tell the story of how on my first day on this campus, October 1995, I stopped at that gate and I told the boss, I have arrived OAU campus. They advised me and said, you have not arrived. But as a stubborn boy that I am, I dropped my 3 big bags of pots, amala, and everything I had. And then God blessed us with a shower. And it rained. So I learned my last lesson in humility. Listen to bus drivers. I sent that email to Philip Emeagwali, and he responded. That email started my career. Philip Emeagwali wrote to Chris Owaje, who was the president of the Information Technology Association of Nigeria, and said, I don't know who this boy is, but he's pretty bold, saying to me to come and talk to students in Ife. At that time, Nigeria was trying to invite Philip Emeagwali. The president had, asked that they invite him to come and do a tour of universities. And so he connected me with Chris Owaje, who immediately asked me to come and address the AISPI Association of Nigeria conference in 2000 in December in Abuja. When my colleagues were presenting their final year project and defending on campus, I did the same. And thanks to Professor Kunle Kendi. And I mention those names because people know the stories. Not only defended my project on campus, and Professor Kunle Kendi did say something. He said, Gbenga, this research that you have done on e-commerce, and I focused on e-registration. This was in the year 2000. Of course, discouragement was, what is e-registration? But it was from a personal pain. I remember standing on a queue at the health center. Every day, 3 people to me, and it's about to be my turn, and they will say, come tomorrow. I want to sign for a course. I see this lecturer every day in White House. But the day I need to sign for his course, he's not available. So I was like, I'm tired. Why don't we do it electronically? And Professor Kendi said, this doesn't sound realistic now, but put it on a CD. Give a copy to the school, and when it is done, you will know you pioneered something. Many years later, I paid for my younger sister to go to University of Ilorin to register. And she told me she was registering online. I cried. She's 7 years younger than me, by the way. I'm sure you are wondering what happened. I cried because, for once, I saw the direct relationship between the town, industry, and the gown, the institution. Safe to say, not only did I start my career based on what I learned here, it began to pay the bills. I squatted, Angola year one. Thankfully, everybody gets accommodation in year one. I mean, almost everybody. But from year two, I did not explain to the DSA the other time, but everybody who is on campus knows that it becomes a bit more difficult in year two and year three. So I was squatting. But by my final year, I didn't have to squat anymore because I was applying the innovation I was taught in the class right on campus. After Dr. Kayode Odele and Isaac Yang, and I'm mentioning names, after they created what was called a year CD, what they basically did was the yearbook, they converted into year CD. I then took it a step further. Myself, Ogem Diike, who now works in aviation and finance in the US, Tokwe Shoremi, who now works in Canada in project management. Do you understand what's going on here? Some of our best leave, not because they want to, but because of a few things I will talk about in a moment, because of some things that happen in the environment. I began to make ESCDs for every fellowship on campus and every department that cared, and I became a rich student. So much that instead of going to B2, where we ate 6 to 6, you may not know what that means. It is fufu. You eat at 6 a.m., you are fine until 6 p.m. I moved from eating at B2 to going, A2 to B2 a la carte. I don't know if they are still there. Okay. And then at some point went to spices. It was practical. And I'm sharing this because I know there are students in the room who are thinking to themselves, I have ideas. I came to this campus with one plan, to create a device. I came to study engineering, and my plan was to create a device that would generate power without fuel and without anything else. Of course, as a child, I had dreams. And I think that the point where that dream died was in the physics lab, where the windows were open and we were told to calculate the gravitational constant. Of course, when the windows are open, you can never get 9.8 as your final answer because the windows are open. It's not standard temperature and pressure. But the lab attendant walked over to me. He saw what I wrote and said, you are feeling like Ali Day. Ali Day is the physics textbook of repute. And he advised me, he said, instead of feeling like Ali Day, you better write the right answer. Ladies and gentlemen, on that day, that dream was toned down a little. Thankfully, the dream didn't fully die. And the interesting thing is that the work I do now, interesting enough, has very little to do with electronic and electrical engineering, but a lot to do with technology policy, which is what explains why when I got invitation to come to speak here today, I didn't waste time in saying yes. That was one course that I didn't struggle with. TPD 501 was not a struggle, not because it wasn't tough, but because I had the aptitude for it. And I think this must be the first lesson we learn in the marriage between town and gown. There are courses that students have natural aptitude at, and we must encourage them, not just to get a 70, but to apply it practically. The work that I started in Ajegunle, Lagos, Nigeria, has now been exported across various countries on this continent, and every time the name Paradigm Initiative rings in any country, it rings because I got the first foundation laid here while I was studying as an electrical engineering student and while TPD was a course. One of the reasons why I finished, by the way, my non-residential fellowship at Stanford. And one of the things I find the most interesting with that university, every time I go back there, is the relationship between the lecturers and the students. The lecturers are the chairmen of the companies that the students run. You run into an average lecturer on campus, and is a director in a company. I can mention examples. Google. And I think that speaks to the relationship between students and lecturers. My friend, Advancement Office has assured me that that is changing. And I'm glad that it is changing. Not only from the side of the lecturers alone, seeing students as potential business partners. Listen, there is enough research material on OAU campus to fund Nigeria's budget for 10 years. I have read those papers. In writing my own final year project, I had access to previous papers. They're all there. And some of them, you open them and you read them and you're like, this is money. But it can never become money. The future of funding for education is not with government. And I know that this is probably the wrong place to say that. But trust me, it's not. There is a lot more resources tied up in your students, in many of the students. 1%, one of the students from here, Edward Pokwala, runs a fintech company that I'm sure that 1% of his annual budget will cover the entire resources that his former department will need. I'm glad that the VC mentioned CWES. I did CWES in year 2. I think it was a few weeks. Year 3 for 1 month. Year 4 for 6 months. And by the way, the CWES for 6 months for me, most of my classmates, of course, were going to share. I mean, come on. You're right, sir. It is the money. It was 40,000 naira. But I was lucky. A man of blessed memory who I've written a lot about, Dr. James A. Shotomi, said to me, I will pay you the 40,000 naira of Shell, but you will learn. He took me to his company, Right Technologies Limited in Lagos, Marina, Kingsway Building, taught me how to design websites, sent me back to campus, not as a student. He gave me complimentary cards and said, listen, you are still a staff of this company. I came back to campus, not just as a final year student, but also as a member of the industry looking for website projects on campus. I went to University Press. I should not tell you how that conversation went. It did not go well. I have since gone back there and the conversation went well. But that first conversation was not nice. Because I showed up as a student and the person I met treated me like a poor student. But thankfully, that is changing. I think Nigeria is in a very unique moment right now. There's a lot of argument about, see, I know this, and of course, as a politician, I'm sure you can tell us. I think that the student loan law is a signal. I think it's a signal. And we know what is coming. So we're now in that moment where we must use our people power. There is enough innovation. And I can say this for a fact. Computer science department in Ife alone, if you ask all your former students to come back and sum up the capitalization of their companies, you will change the name of OAU to not just Obafemi University, to, I don't know. You will call Dangote and it will be running in your direction. And I'm not kidding. The only challenge is that many of them, their companies are registered in Delaware in the US, not in Nigeria. Their directors are not former lecturers of theirs. Their directors are people from other countries who listened to them when they tried to explain their ideas. I went to a lecturer in quarters, explained the same idea that I shared with Philip Emeguali. He was mowing his lawn. And we're now friends, by the way. We're now very good friends. But the conversation was different. There was a sharp contrast between town and gown, between academia and industry. And that wall, that false wall, has to collapse. I studied elect-elect, so I know every year military men, and I believe women, study in that department. That department at some point had clean enough water to work on integrated circuits. So when the VC talked about water, that was what came to mind. Because at some point I asked, why are we not doing ICs anymore? And I remember, I think it was Professor Sassono at the time who said, well, we don't have clean water. And for the first time in my life, I understood the relationship between clean water and integrated circuits, even though I had seen the theory of it. Let me close with a few recommendations. First is very glaring. We need to focus our learning curriculum on practical applications and not theory. I think that's very obvious. Someone once accused me of studying the history of engineering and not engineering itself. I didn't find it funny, but I understood what they were saying when I realized that, as a joke, one of our lecturers told us that the notes that he took when he was a student at the department were the notes he was using for us. And I thought that was dangerous. It's dangerous for technology because technology's half-life is so fast. If I tell you anything today, it may not be valid again in 6 months. Moore's theory about technology multiplying every 18 months or less is archaic. In fact, how to know that is to listen to our children. When my son told me we no longer have 9 planets, I was confused. I said, I crammed my very excellent Mr. Jones serves us 9 plates. There must be 9 planets. But no. At some point, a cousin of mine told me that hydrogen was not a valid item on the periodic table. I became a bit confused, and then she explained. Knowledge is transient. This is the reason why a pool of water that stays stagnant would stink. And unfortunately, I'm afraid to say, and I know that saying this here, I may never be invited again to this campus. Of course, I'm sure I will be. Our education stinks because it's stagnant. I know of the effort of our lecturers and the academic brilliance that we have on this campus. I know. Because I know that many of you here are also consultants to the World Bank. And the same things that you try to get to implement here are implemented in other countries. And I should know that. Professor Gabriel Olalere Ajayi of blessed memory, when we were both members of the African Technical Advisory Committee of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, tried his very best to get Nigeria to implement some things. And Nigeria decided that, well, why should we listen to a lecturer? As you said, sir. But guess what? Guess which countries listened? Rwanda and Ghana. Does it surprise you today that Rwanda is where it is? It hurts that I spent the earliest part of my career to help build Rwanda and Ghana. And I don't mind. I'm African. Well, as you can see. I hope. But I was born in Nigeria. And it's a shame at times when I know that the things that I would easily say to a Rwanda, to a Kenya, to a Ghana, it will fall on deaf ears when you say it in Nigeria. Number 2, we need to stop rewarding cram, pass, forget. I call it Operation CPF. Hello, students. We know. Agberu, Beso. We didn't bother with studying before exams. A few days to exams. That's why in my day, when students were not ready, somehow, for some reason, there's Aluta and we go home. And then we come back and they say exams will start immediately and then there'll be Aluta and we'll go home. And then at some point, we will have no choice and sit for the exams. We need to stop rewarding the way we set questions. And guess what? Lecturers. You know when they say in Yoruba, Okonwo, as in their husband has come. Your husband has arrived in artificial intelligence. Chat GPT. You don't want me to tell them. They know already. If your question is theory and not practical, I can answer it without studying. All I need is to see your past questions. And we know which textbooks you use for your past questions. At least in my department, we had a timetable. Dr. So, we know the textbook. If he gives you a test, it is chapter 1. Second test, chapter 3, exam is always towards the end. We need to reward, cram pass, and forget less, and focus on practice and knowledge, both in how questions are set and in how grading is done. Number 3, invite industry experts. Not just to the classroom, I will get to that, but one of the reasons I immediately said yes to this conference is because I think it is both timely and important. I want to offer, and this is my first offer, I'll make 3 offers here, and I'm going to get into trouble with my colleagues in the office. One of them is here, because I will make promises here today that will need resources to be fulfilled, but that is me playing my part. And the first is that I would ask humbly that when you plan 2025 Biennial AISPI International Conference, please invite industry experts to the planning committee. I will take the personal responsibility of pulling some of them by the ears to join. I know it will be hard, because I have attempted that in the past, and somebody told me, as long as Dr. So-and-so will not be there, because of some certain experiences that they had. But that's by the way. But apart from just being part of planning a conference, that is not enough. We must bring industry experts into the classroom. I'm not surprised that a VC immediately gave you his card. This is how knowledge is diffused. Theory meets practical. What is the point of teaching how to use surveillance to track things when it is just theory? And when there is a gentleman who has done it in the field and could come to the classroom to tell you. I love mathematics. In fact, I wanted to study mathematics here in Ife, but my parents advised that I should do, my parents' generation, it had to be engineering, medicine, law, accounting. It had to be, they called it professional courses. But my love for mathematics never stopped, because I saw mathematics in operation. I knew that planes fly because of mathematics. I watched documentaries that talked about Gaussian surfaces, not as theory, but as reality. Archimedes' principle for me was not about displacing anything in a body of water or anything. It was reality. And this must come back to the classroom. It's the reason why the new generation of people we're teaching demand multimedia in the classroom. You can't, and I hope that nobody is still punished, no lecturer is still punished by being asked to stand in amphitheater to teach 2,000 students without a microphone. Nobody is listening to you. My dad came to campus one of those days. Oh man, my dad is a teacher, retired teacher. The only place, he had my timetable, so he just went to amphitheater where my lecture, Physics 101, was supposed to be holding. Unfortunately, it just happened to be one of those days I was not in class. My confident father, as a teacher, went to the teacher on the stage and said, "Oh, my son is here." Camaraderie, esprit de corps. Let me talk to him. Let me call him out. Gbenga Sesan. Nah, lie. I was in H8 Angola Hall. Well, I wasn't exactly enjoying, but that's a story for another day. I have the privilege of making a second announcement and a promise. For a while, my friend and former HOD of Elect had asked me to come back to campus to practice what I was preaching. And because I, of course, have a company to build, it was difficult to make the time. And to be honest, the travel between Lagos and Ife, there's no airport here. It's 3.5 hours. The roads are not the best. Every time you go both ways, you have to send it for servicing. But I'm making that commitment now. And I think it's very clear. I have reached out to AISPI, and I've said, not only am I willing to commit 40 hours every year, but I'm willing to connect any faculty that has to do with technology. That's what I know. I don't know medicine. I don't know law. Well, I know a bit of law because I work in human rights. And I did SEL. You guys are laughing, But you have no idea how SEL helped me when I made my first presentation at the United Nations. I sounded like a lawyer. All I was talking about was just the notes from SEL. It's not nothing. Stronger industry collaboration in faculty research. I think that the days when research was just to increase the number on your CV, I think those days are gone. The days when we used to tell students, go and pick from a list of topics. Like I said when I came here, I want to believe those days are gone. Final year projects must solve real life problems. If you're in the University of Lagos and you are in civil engineering or any relevant department, we should be asking you about how to solve traffic problems. If you are in OAU, when the MC, when the PRO mentioned, was it the PRO that mentioned tech bread? Oh, it was a dean that mentioned tech bread. You have no idea how much we saved towards tech bread. It's still alive. Okay, I have to go with some. Pekila, we have to get some. It's a delight. There is no reason why, as you're driving towards here, and people are selling you Dodo Ikiri, there is no reason why people should not be selling tech bread. You solve hunger problems, you get money for it, problem solved. As another final promise, I know that AISPI has, and I found out, don't worry, I found out, that AISPI has master's level and PhD level students who do research work. I want to commit on behalf of my organization to supporting the best and the brightest, not those who cram, pass, and forget, but those who apply knowledge towards innovation in AISPI beginning from next year. And the reason for that is because it's win-win. Every company that invests in the academia benefits. Not only do you get staff that are well-rounded, you also get a pipeline of a future workforce. This here is not theory. I look forward to the days when, as a first or second year student on this campus or any campus in Nigeria, students will have ideas that will not be discouraged by the lab attendant, but will be encouraged by the lecturer who will give them advice on how to turn that idea into money. And that lecturer will be the first member of their board. And at times, you will look at the lecturers and say, Oga, where is this money coming from? You'll be like, oh, we had a board meeting last week in Geneva, and that company, remember that boy that was in my class? He has now solved the water problem for the world. That is where innovation of these young men and women I'm looking at here, innovation by these students in this room is the future of education funding in this country, not government. There is so much government can do. I paid 90 naira, and I'm grateful. I paid 90 naira for accommodation. I paid 120 naira for tuition. My daughter in preschool, I said this to her, she doesn't understand. She said, Daddy, you're lying. I said, the amount of money we pay on you every year saw me through OAU campus. Which is why I believe I hold this campus a debt. Which is why I believe anyone in my generation holds every university they attended a debt. Regardless of the experiences we had. We all had interesting experiences. Lecturers who were a bit too tough. But the relationships are changing, and I'm glad for that. And I have one final challenge for the students here. Any final year student in the room? Any final year student in the room? I will throw a challenge, not just for AISPI, for all the students in the room. And my email address I will share. It's Gbenga, just this name. Gbenga, okay, you can see clearly. Gbenga.Sesan@paradigmhq.org. If you're a final year student in this room and you're doing anything that has to do with our topic for today, science, technology, and innovation, send me, of course you have to do something first. That's how you know who is serious. Send me a half pager on what you're doing and how it will create a relationship between the academia and industry. And you will not need to pay for any aspect of your research work from the beginning to the end. I'm making this promise because, and I'll close with this. In my final year, I mentioned the name Chris Uwaje. Chris Uwaje was the man who funded my final year project. He was the president of AISPI of Nigeria, and he asked me, how much do you need to complete your final year project? Because it was in e-commerce. And I made the mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, by saying 20,000 naira. Oh, it was a lot of money in 1999, trust me. It was a lot of money. And then he said, send me your account number. And then I regretted it instantly. Why did I not say 200,000 naira? I want to pay back. And this is not my company now, this is me. Do I have to get home and tell my wife I have spent our money? But don't worry, I'll be fine. Because, by the way, she's got a PhD in sociology, she teaches in UI. And, well, she's come here once in a while, but now a French university is stealing her from, let me not tell that story. It's another sad story of how we lose intellectuals to other countries that pay more attention to the things they tell us and we don't listen to. So, any student who takes up that challenge, I will do to you what Chris Uwaje did to me. And I'm hoping, I did that 23 years ago. I'm hoping much less than 23 years from now, not only will you do the same, but we will create a ripple effect of connecting academia and industry such that lecturers and students become business partners, solution providers, innovators, and the theory of the gap between town and gown is put to rest forever. June 2001, I finished from here. And I tell people, I've been to many other schools, and at times they try to claim that, he's Harvard trained, whatever trained. And I say to them, that's not true. The things that I do today, the foundation was laid here. My first COO, my first program manager are all from here. And it's not just because Ife is the only school, but because it was a school I knew, and it was a space I knew where we could convert our knowledge into innovation and create not just wealth for ourselves, but for everyone who comes in touch with our training and with everything else that they learn. Great Ife, Africa's most beautiful campus. Conscious, vigilant, and Aluta against all. When we say Aluta against all oppression, I know it's not Aluta only against what we don't want to hear, but Aluta against some of the things we do ourselves. Aluta against the norm. Aluta and change in a place where students and lecturers become collaborators. Thank you for listening.
You can do much better for Gbenga.